Hello and welcome to the DeVere live webinar series. I'm here live from Shanghai, and today we're joined by Paul MacBeth live from the UK. He's going to be talking all about a very interesting, a very unique property investment opportunity. I'm very excited to be bringing that to you today. So before I hand over to Paul, let me go through what we're going to be doing today, the format of today. So first of all, we want to know your opinion. We want to know what's important to you about property investment. I'm then going to hand over to Paul. He's going to go through this very interesting opportunity. And I'm sure that throughout that presentation, there's going to be lots of questions that you're going to want to ask. So what you'll see towards the bottom is a chat box, okay? And in that chat box, I need you to select all panelists and attendees. And if you select that and then type your question in, and then we'll all see those questions come up, and I'm sure your questions could then inspire more questions. And what I'll do after the presentation is then I'll put those questions to Paul, and we'll get those out to you as well. And following that, we'll then do the results of the poll. And at the very end, you know, there's going to be a lot of information, and there's some of that you might want to actually take action upon, some of that information. So we'll also give you the opportunity to do that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring up the first poll. So what we want to know is, when it comes to property investment, what is the most important thing to you? Is it growth? Is it income, security, passing on wealth to your dependents, or is it something else? So choose one of those options that's come up there: growth, income, security, passing on wealth, or other. What's most important for you when it comes to property investment? And we will release the results of that a little bit later on. So Paul, if you want to turn on your mic and turn on your video camera as well. Paul MacBeth works for MacBeale, and they specialize in life tenancy investments. I'm not going to tell you anything more than that because Paul will do the explanation. So if you want to turn your video on as well, Paul, so we can see you, and then I'll hand over to you. All yours, Paul.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the video.
Just in the bottom left, next to where mute is, it should say start video.
Left, no, not seen it. My thumbnail. Don't know.
Okay, don't worry. We can do it without video, not a problem. Yeah. We can imagine anyway, don't worry. We've got your photo there, so carry on, and if you find it later on, great.
Right, so can you see my screen now?
Yep, we can see you fine.
Can you see my screen? Yes, hi, welcome. Okay, welcome to the DeVere webinar. My name is Paul MacBeth from MacBeale Property. No doubt people are logging in from many different locations. I'm doing this webinar from Inverness in Scotland, and hopefully the broadcast is coming through clearly and the web link does not drop off halfway through. MacBeale Property was set up to market lifetime tenancy property, both internationally and in the UK. We don't do buy-to-let property, off-plan property, HMO, or student accommodation. We deal solely with lifetime tenancy property, which is a very niche product. So let's have a look and see how all this works. So many people are only hearing about what lifetime tenancy property is for the first time. So what is a lifetime tenancy property investment? It's whereby two or more parties obtain a property. The lifetime tenant buys the right to live in the property for the rest of their lives, or until they go into long-term care. The investor buys the legal ownership of the property. Typically, the life tenant pays 47% of the RICS vacant market value, with the investor paying the balance of 53%. Lifetime tenancy has been a business model in the UK for 40 plus years, but previously it's been an institutional investment only and used almost exclusively by banks and insurance companies as part of their own overall property portfolios. It has been in existence since the 18th century in France, but in a slightly different format. In France, for example, the investor pays a lump sum to the life tenant In addition, they also pay the life tenant a pension for life. In the UK, investor only pays a lump sum towards the value of the property, with the life tenant paying the balance. The life tenant is going to be someone single, married, or possibly even a same-sex couple who are over the age of 60. They will have already considered selling and downsizing, along with equity release and renting in the open market. They are buying the right to live in the property for the rest of their lives or until they go into long-term care. They are your average working people who have come to the realization that in their current position, they are not going to have sufficient funds to live on in retirement. He may have worked in manufacturing or construction. His partner may have had a part-time job at Boots. They have done well in their lives, brought up a couple of kids, paid off their existing home, and have a nice car to drive. They will have some pensions and savings in place, but not quite enough to live comfortably in retirement. So they are average people. They could be your mum and dad, or indeed they could be my mum and dad. So they're reaching retirement age, and what are the options? This is a fairly typical example of a potential life tenant. They have a property valued around 400,000, and they have a small pension and between 10 and 20,000 pounds in savings. So what are their actual options? Let's have a look. So first off, sell and downsize. This is the first thing that most people think of. In many cases, this simply does not work out, as often the compromises which need to be made just don't work for them. It may be they can't get that extra bedroom when the family come to stay, or the downsized property does not have a garden. It may be they still require a garage and outside storage space. Also, depending on the property they're downsizing from, sometimes there simply isn't enough money left over to enable them to live comfortably in retirement. Secondly is equity release. Those of you who watch UK daytime TV will know 1 in 3 ads are either over 50s life assurance or equity release. Equity release is a debt registered against their property on a compound basis, which is repaid when they die or go into long-term care. With equity release, the person remains in their existing home. The amount they can release is dependent upon their age. Typically, the older they are, the more they can borrow. This sometimes leads to younger people not being able to release sufficient funds. The third option is renting in the open market. Of course, they can sell their property and use the proceeds to rent in the open market. There are, however, several issues with this, not least, who is your potential landlord going to be? However, the biggest issue of all is that of security. When you've reached retirement age, do you really want to be worried if the roof over your head is in any form of jeopardy? This is why renting in the open market is the least used option of all. Finally, there's life tenancy. They secure a lease with a one-off payment that lasts until they pass away. With lifetime tenancy, they have already sold their existing property and are moving into a new property. They pay a one-off amount to live in the property for the rest of their lives. There is no ongoing debt or cost attached to the property. All the proceeds they've received from the previous property is available to them to use in whichever manner they see fit. This often leads to the life tenant having far more cash available to them than if they went down the traditional equity release route. The life tenants go through a 14-stage process before they become a life tenant. We will have gone through all the options available to them, including selling and downsizing, equity release, and renting in the open market. We will have met with their family, and they will have spoken to their legal people. So everyone has been kept in the loop from day one. To give you an idea of how much detail we go into when selecting a life tenant, on average, it takes between 6 and 18 months to fully qualify a potential life tenant. In fact, less than 1 in 5 people who inquire get to become a life tenant. So there are no hard sales tactics used. In fact, the opposite is true. We are aware that this is a sensitive issue, and we do everything in our power to ensure that the lifetime tenant is happy to become a tenant. Had we not been so thorough in the initial stages, this could lead to the life tenants being unhappy at a later stage, and this is a situation we wish to avoid at all costs. We don't want unhappy tenants or investors for that matter. Here is a brief video to give you an idea of how it currently all works.
Life tenancy investments are designed to give investors consistent capital growth. During the last 20 years, investors in life tenancy properties have enjoyed fantastic capital appreciation compared with similar buy-to-let properties due to the initial discounts available. Unlike buying a traditional buy-to-let property, dealing with the hassles of short-term tenants and property maintenance, a life tenancy investment has none of these headaches. Here's our quick guide into how it works. By investing in a life tenancy, you are purchasing a UK property with long-term elderly tenants. You are able to purchase the property with an average discount of 47% below the property price paid by the life tenants. The life tenants can then live in the property rent-free until the end of their natural lives or until they permanently move out of the home. During this time, they will be responsible for all of the maintenance and upkeep of the property. Your upfront discount is actuarially calculated to reflect the life expectancy of the tenants. In other words, the longer the life tenants are likely to live in the property, the greater the discount. During the life tenancy, you also get the benefit of many years of house price inflation. The longer the life tenants live in the property, the more you will make in capital appreciation. After the life tenants permanently vacate the property, whether that is through passing away or moving into assisted care, you get the property to sell, rent, move into, or give to a loved one. It's a win-win situation for both parties. The life tenants secure a home to live in for the remainder of their lives, free from the worry of rental or mortgage payments, while they significant profits from a huge initial discount and the subsequent years of capital appreciation. If you would like to get access to these on our website.
So, to recap so far, it's an agreement between two parties. Firstly, we have the tenant, who's going to be age 60 plus. They can either be a single person or a married couple, and they are buying the right to live in a property for the rest of their lives or until they move into assisted care. Other party, sorry about that, is the investor, who is the legal owner of the property, and they get to buy the property with a substantial upfront discount and enjoy long-term capital growth. So, what is the process we use to match the tenant with the investors? We use 4 stages to obtain a lifetime tenancy property. First, it's finding the life tenants. These are done via our network of estate agents. We then use a 14-stage vetting process on the life tenant. The life tenant has been given a budget which was agreed during the 14-stage vetting process. They are free to choose any property they wish in any location. We have no input whatsoever where they choose their final home. The discount to the investor is determined by the age and sex of the life tenant and is not influenced by any other facts such as property type, rental value, or location. The property then goes out to our investors. Properties will only remain on our books between 10 and 14 days. This is due to the fact that the sale has been agreed on the open market for the current market value. There are no distressed properties or bank repros with life tenancy. All our lifetime tenancy properties are available on the open market to purchase as a normal residence when the life tenant chooses that particular property. So, your house could become a lifetime tenancy property were it on the market and one of our life tenants wished to buy it. Many of the properties can be seen on Rightmove or Zoopla, so you can often see that they've been sold subject to contract. The price we offer the property to the investor for is equal to or often less than the advertised sales price. We then apply the discount to the property using actuarial tables based on the life tenant's age. All the properties have had an independent RICS valuation done to ensure that the property is at a fair and accurate value. If the property had not been sold within 10 to 14 days, we will then offer the property back into the institutional market, who have been the main buyers of these properties over the last 40 years, as we need to complete the agreed purchase. And finally, solicitors are appointed on both sides to initiate the exchange of contracts. We use a standard contract for all lifetime tenancy property. So, how can a property revert to an investor? It can either be by the life tenant passing away, moving into assisted care, or if the life tenant vacates the property for more than 6 months and a day, at which stage the investor is then free to either sell the property, rent the property, remortgage it, live in it, or even give it to a loved one. So why would you buy a property with a life tenant as opposed to a property that's buy to let? So are you the registered owner with the UK Land Registry? In both cases, both buy to let and life tenancy, that is yes. Can properties be resold on the secondary market? Again, the answer is yes to both those questions. Are UK properties available at up to a 60% discount? This is where the differences begin to appear. A buy-to-let property can't normally be bought with a 60% discount. What about stamp duty? Like all property, lifetime tenancy properties are subject to stamp duty. The amount charged will depend on the value of the property, and different rates are applied to different values. The normal threshold for stamp duty starts at 125,000. Although the lifetime tenancy, many of our properties are below the threshold of 125,000, so no stamp duty would apply to these properties. All of our properties are also exempt from the 3% stamp duty surcharge, regardless of how many properties the investor owns. This is one of the many benefits of lifetime tenancy property over buy-to-let. This could be a significant saving on multiple purchases. Bear in mind, stamp duty is nothing more than a tax, and once paid can never be recovered or offset. So any potential gains made through property purchase have to deduct stamp duty costs. There's no income tax, as there is no income payable from a life tenancy property. The income, or rent if you like, is in the form of an initial substantial upfront discount. No property maintenance costs. There are several unique features with lifetime tenancy property. For me, this is an amazing one. The investor has no liability to maintenance of the property in any shape or form, none at all. That responsibility lies with the life tenant and forms part of their contract, which is registered at the Land Registry. So everything from block drains to a roof is the responsibility of the life tenant. For the investor living overseas, this means no more phone calls at 3 in the morning when there is a broken washing machine, the door is jammed, or the boiler's gone on the blink. This really is one of the main headaches I regularly hear buy-to-let landlords complain about, and is a constant bane in their lives. With lifetime tenancy, this is not an issue at all, as the life tenant is responsible for all maintenance, no matter how big or how small. No rental voids. There are no rental voids, as there is no rent payable. Rental voids are something that many new buy-to-let owners fail to include in their initial financial calculations. Is the life tenant responsible for utility bills and insurance? Yes. So, all gas, electric, water, council taxes are all the responsibility of the life tenant, and form part of the lease agreement, which is registered with the Land Registry. The legal requirement to provide buildings insurance lies with our provider. All the lifetime tenancy properties are placed on a block policy, and the premium is recovered from the life tenant as part of the tenancy agreement. There is no need for the investor to purchase buildings insurance, as this has already been done. Is there only one tenancy issued? This is brilliant. only ever having one tenant. The amount of time and money involved with constantly finding new tenants is immeasurable and can often be quite stressful. If the life tenant were to remarry, the new partner must get written permission from the investor to live in the property. They must also sign a disclaimer which enforces the fact that they have no rights to remain in the property after the original life tenant has either died or gone into long-term care. There is only one tenancy agreement, so unless someone's on the agreement day one, they can never be added in the future. This would also apply to family members of the life tenant. It would also apply if the life tenant needed to have live-in care in later years. The carer or nurse would also need written permission to live in the property and would need to sign the disclaimer giving them no rights to remain in the property after the life tenant died. This is all fully covered as part of the 14-stage vetting process for a life tenant and will also have been discussed with close members of the family at a very early stage. Rental agency fees. These fees can run anywhere between 8 to 12% of the rental income, and over the years add up to a significant amount. The average property rental in 2019 for England was £967 per month. So if we use an average rental fee of 10% per month, this would equate to £1,100 per annum. This would total over £23,000 over a 20-year period. With a lifetime tenancy property, this can be avoided completely. There are no gas and electrical inspection fees with a lifetime tenancy property. There's no council tax payments either. The average Band D council tax bill in England for 2019 was £1,671, up 5% from £1,591 in 2018. So over a period of 20 years, this would represent a saving of over £33,000 to the life tenant investor. There is no landlord's registration required for a lifetime tenancy investor. So if you add up all the savings on a life tenancy property, you will see that it's a substantial sum. On average, it's more than £60,000 over 20 years. So let's look at an example of what sort of return investor may achieve a lifetime tenancy property. In this example, we've got a male aged 62 and a female aged 65. We have a typical life tenancy property with a value of £250,000. Using our discount tables, this means an investor could buy this property for £104,000. The discount would be 58% or £145,000. This is the amount the life tenant has paid to live in the property for the rest of their lives. Assuming now that the life tenants have vacated the property either by passing on or going into long-term care, the investor may get this type of return. You can see that day one, the investor has potentially made £145,000. This is the amount the life tenant has paid to live in the property for the rest of their lives. So after 5 years, that could be potentially just under 200,000, and after 20 years is an impressive 440,000. Let's assume now, in this example, that the investor's situation has changed and they wish to sell the property. We know that the existing life tenant's rights are registered and protected at the UK Land Registry, so the property will need to be sold with the existing life tenant in place. For ease of the example, we're using a male aged 60. Our investor has bought the property with an open market value of £250,000 for just under £120,000. This represented a saving of £130,000 from the market value of £250,000. In this table, we've assumed that property prices will increase by the normal 4% house price inflation, and we will also apply the same actuarial discount formula to the resale values. So the investor now wishes to sell their property after 5 years. How much will the investor get back? Well, let's have a look. Over the last 5 years, the property price has risen from 250 to 304,000 with normal house price inflation. We also know that the Life Tenant is now 5 years older and is 65 years old. So the property, after discount, would go back on the market for £170,000. This means our investor has made a profit of £50,000 after 5 years. Had the investor held the property for 10 years, we would apply the same formula and see that the property price has risen from 250 to 370,000 pounds. So after the discount, the property would go back on the market for 238,000. This would mean the investor would have made a profit of 118,000 pounds after 10 years, which equates to just under 100%. And as you can see further down the table, after 30 years, the investor could have made a potential 550% plus profit on their initial investment of just under 120,000 pounds. So there are benefits all round. For the tenant, they secure a home to live in for the rest of their lives without the need for rental payment or any ongoing uncertainty. And for the investor, he gets to buy an investment property with a significant upfront discount. Let's have a look at an example property and how we present it to an investor. In this case, it's a 1-bedroom apartment in Kent. We've used this as it's priced very closely to our average discount, which I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. The average discount on a Life Tenancy property is 47%. Our properties normally include internal pictures as well as external pictures. You can see it's valued at 215,000 and the investment price is just under 112,000. So the discount is 103,000 pounds. We give a floor plan and comparisons with similar property in the area which have recently been sold. In addition, we give a location overview along with the property price increase in the area over both the last 12 months and 20 years. There's also a projection as to what the property price might be in 5, 10 and 20 years' time. So, how can an investor buy a property? Firstly, you need to register. Before a potential investor can reserve a property, we need to complete our KYC process. This includes a copy passport, a utility bill dated within the last 3 months, details of the solicitor, and proof of funds. When we say proof of funds, we are looking for available cash in a bank account. £100,000 in investment bonds or shares is not going to be sufficient, as there may be a delay in accessing these funds. In addition, your solicitor will probably want the documents certified. Only once we have a full KYC in place will we be able to reserve a property. The main reason we are very particular on money in a bank account is we are potentially about to exchange on the property and have 30 days or less to complete. We don't want to get to completion date and find the investor has no funds. So, any questions?
Thank you so much, Paul. Excellent. And I'm just going to attempt to start your video. You should get a little request there. I just clicked ask to start video, see if that works. But thank you so much for that. That was excellent presentation, so much information. There you are, fantastic. Brilliant, excellent. Okay, so yeah, we've had quite a few questions come in and we had quite a few that came in before as well. So it was very, very unique kind of investment, so people will ask a real variety. So the first one's from Rich. He says, please can I ask who regulates this market?
Okay, there is no regulation on lifetime tenancy property as such, as it's a property investment, like a normal house purchase. The part that is regulated is where we find the life tenant and we go through their financials and work out how much they can afford to live, etc., etc. So that part of the business is regulated, but the actual selling of the property is not regulated as it's a normal house purchase. It's been in front of the FSA 2 or 3 times so far, and each time they've come back and said there's no need to register this for regulation because it's a simple house purchase.
Okay, All right, so loan registry, excellent. Dave's asked, what advantages does life tenancy have over a roll-up mortgage? Do you know much about that?
Depends what he means by roll-up mortgage.
Yeah, I wasn't too sure. I did try to throw back a question.
A roll-up mortgage would, yeah. Well, I'm assuming that by roll-up mortgage, you means you just roll the interest up and never pay anything until the property is sold. But these lifetime tenancy properties, you can't buy with a mortgage anyway. The simple reason there's a life tenant in place. A lender wouldn't lend on a life tenancy property simply because there's a life, their security would be compromised. So life tenancy investments are for cash buyers only. Yeah, okay. So you couldn't really compare it with a roll-up mortgage in any shape or form.
Okay.
Yeah, still there?
Yeah, still there, yeah. Okay, excellent. So next question that came in. So when the investor gains the property and chooses to let the property out, will they still be exempt from income tax?
No, because once they take possession of the property, then obviously if they're renting the property out, they have income. If you've got income in the UK or from a UK source, you will pay UK income tax regardless. So it just become like a normal buy-to-let mortgage or property at that stage.
Okay. So what does a typical Yeah. What does a typical investor do at that stage when the property does become theirs? Do most sell straight away, or do they let it out? What's the typical investor?
Some do, some don't. You see, it depends what they bought them for. Like in my situation, I bought one for my granddaughter. So when that property reverts back to her, she hopefully will still only be 10 or 12 years of age, and we will just simply rent that out at that stage until she's ready to actually do something with. It will depend on why the guy bought it in the first place. Some people buy it for their children, some people for their own retirement pot, some people it's just straight investments. Okay. But they have the choice at that stage whether they buy it, rent it, move into it, whatever they wish to do. It's theirs completely.
Yeah, I guess it depends on a few different factors, the market situation, and all things like that.
Yes, and what their financials are at that time, because obviously who knows what will happen in 5 years, 8 years, 10 years time, you know? But it's up to them. There's no restrictions on what they do with it once it becomes theirs.
Okay. How old do you have to be to do a life tenancy investment? Or maybe both sides, I guess, to be a tenant or to make the investment?
Right. The tenant has to be a minimum of age 60. The investor can be any age whatsoever, but the life tenants will always be minimum of age 60.
Okay. And do people do, I mean, you sort of mentioned, you know, with the children and grandchildren, I mean, do people put it in the name of a dependent? Is that possible? Yeah.
Sorry?
Can you put them in, so if I was the investor, could I put it in a daughter or granddaughter's name when doing the life tenancy, or must it be in my name as the investor? Hello?
All right, that'll do you now.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you now, yes, but didn't hear the last question, whatever it was.
So can you put the investment in somebody else's name, like a child or the grandchild?
Yes, indeed you can. You can also put it in the name of a company, both onshore, offshore, an SPV, a trust, anything that is a legal entity, whether that be your grandchild, your kids, your company, anything at all, as long as it's a legal entity. It could be 5 different family members together in individual names. It can be in whatever. There's no restriction on who can actually own a lifetime tenancy property.
Okay, excellent. Are these properties available all over the UK? That's from Novi. Are these properties available all over the UK?
No, they're not. They are currently all in the south of England. The reason they're in the south of England was this was originally set up by the banks 40 odd years ago. And they were looking for the area where they thought they could get the most gain from UK property. So they stuck with the south of England. They didn't do anything in Scotland, Wales, or in fact anything north of the Watford Gap. We are looking in the next 6 months to expand the coverage from the south of England to include Birmingham and Manchester. But we won't be looking at Scotland Scotland at any stage in the future, because the Scottish property laws are different to that of England. So currently all the properties are in the south of England, from Cornwall all the way through to Norfolk. So Kent, Hampshire, Sussex, Surrey.
Okay, excellent. We lost you a little bit there,
Nothing
but
in the north.
yeah, okay. Oh, so but looking towards the north in the near future.
Yes,
On the, go on.
Yeah, but nothing further than Manchester. We won't be looking at anything in the northeast around Tyneside or anything else, for the simple reason that the property prices are so much lower there.
So another one that's come in, is this safe to do life tenancy?
In what way is it safe? What do you mean by is it safe? This is a normal house purchase. You are the legal owner at the land registry, so no matter what happens, you will always be the legal owner of that property. There are no risks as such. Other than maybe if property prices crashed, but it would take more than 15 years for the initial discount to be wiped out, assuming property years, only then would you get back less than what you'd actually paid for it. That has never happened in UK history. For 15 years, property prices falling by 4% per annum.
Yeah, absolutely. So a question from Stuart. Thanks, good, clear presentation. My question, I live outside of the UK. At what point are we taxed on the gains? And are the gains fully taxable as capital gains? Does this investment mean I am UK tax liable?
Okay, like all property gains, with the exception of your main residence, the profit made from lifetime tenancy properties will be subject to capital gains at the prevailing rate specific to their circumstances. The tax rates could, of course, change over the coming years, but capital gains is always likely to remain. Capital gains tax was introduced in 1965, and once a tax has been introduced, I can't think of any government who ever abolished a long-standing tax revenue. There is no capital gains tax charge until the life tenancy has been actually sold. We're not tax advisors, so really he seek professional advice. But yes, capital gains is potentially charged on a lifetime tenancy property.
Okay, okay. I think that's all of the questions that have come in. But if there are any more questions, please get them in. What I want to do now is actually share the results and ask you a question about that. So our attendees, the majority, were obviously looking for growth, with then followed by income. So would you say this kind of investment is more orientated towards growth investment, presumably, and if they're looking for income, then it's not the right kind of investment? Would that be fair?
If they're looking for income, this is not for them in any shape or form, because there's no income coming from this property. Income would form part of the initial upfront discount. When you're looking at growth, if you sit down and do any financial calculation on buy-to-let with a mortgage or no mortgage, lifetime tenancy property will come out miles ahead, for the simple reason that you can't beat buying a property at half price with the upfront discount. This will murder any buy-to-let stamp duty surcharge. You haven't got any maintenance costs. You haven't got any ongoing utility bill payments. Over the 20-year period, you will save more than £60,000 on any property just by having it as a life tenancy. So for capital gains or capital growth, this can't be beaten under any circumstance. Excellent. But for income, it's terrible. It doesn't pay any.
But yeah, the capital growth aspects to it are very difficult to argue with. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Paul. And if anyone, we have had a couple of questions come in, but we're just running out of time. What we'll do is I'll put those to Paul after the webinar, and we'll release those via email to the people that attended and also in our WeChat group. So obviously there's been a lot of information, and some of you might want to act on that, find out more information about how this kind of investment could affect your own situation. Maybe. Sorry, Paul, what did you say?
No, I'm not saying anything. I'm just agreeing with you.
Yeah, excellent. So lots of excellent information. And it's actually right, because everyone's situation is different, right? That's the most important thing. And we need to make sure that the information that you've got, and you can put it into place with your own situation. And that's where we can come in. So if you want to talk to us about life tenancy investments or other investments in general, click on one of those options, what you'd like more information on, and we can reach out and give you that information. So life tenancy investments, other international property, or other investment options. And we can then feed that information to you, and also just work out what's going to make the most sense in your situation. Okay, so give me a few moments to do that. Like I said, we'll get those questions over to Paul after the webinar, the ones that have come in towards the end. And what I'd like to say is thank you so much for your time, Paul. And thank you to all the attendees. Thank you for your questions, and thank you for your donations. Obviously, we've been raising money throughout this webinar series for Give to Asia, raising money on the frontline pandemic efforts across Asia. Started in Wuhan, now it's across Asia, and now over in the UK, it's been heavily affected. So all around the world who are listening to this, stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you, and good evening.
Cheers.